I'm getting ready to lift the two manuals out of the console so I can start recapping the Tonewheel generator. Here's what it looks like. I won't be able to do a video of the actual move because it's going to be me and one of my brothers. I put in a couple of ramps there, wooden ramps. You can see one there, and there's one there. And then on this end, I think we'll be able to just grab a hold of it under here and back there. The two keyboards are bolted together with these bolts right here. So, and you can see I've got this end out far enough that it's cleared the console case now. I'm waiting for my brother to come over. On this end in the back, there's not really a good place to grab it back there, so what I did was I put one of these straps back there, and I wrapped it around the wood working on the upper manual, and then on the lower manual I'll just grab it right there. So I'll grab it there, and I'll wrap this around my left hand, and should be able to pick it right out of there. And then I'm going to move it over there and set it on that bench and get it out of the way. And then my plan right now is just to recap the Tonewheel generator inside the console, but if I decide that's too much trouble, then I'll have to unsolder the bass pedal harness and then lift it out of there, and I can make room on one of those benches over there. That's a 67 Fender Showman, by the way, with JBL speakers, in case anybody's been wondering what that is. So anyway, when my brother gets over here today, we'll be lifting that out of there, and then I can start working on the Tonewheel generator. Alrighty, so my brother came over and we got the manuals out of the console, leaving the Tonewheel generator in there for now. I had removed the run motor and the scanner in case I decided I was going to remove the manuals by sliding them to the back, but once I got it tipped up and pulled it forward a little bit, we decided the easiest way to do it was just to pull it straight out from the front, so that's what we did. Anyway, there's the Tonewheel generator. This one's got, this is a 91 Tonewheel model. There's a couple of different versions of the 91 Tonewheel described in the service manual. If you look at the pictorial layouts in the service manual, you'll notice that these large capacitors here, on my Tonewheel generator, the capacitors are in the rear next to the terminal strip. And this version of Tonewheel generator, the frequencies are not in numerical order on the terminal strip. So there's a chart that tells you what terminal number has what frequency on it. There's another one that's laid out differently. There's another one that's got these large capacitors here in the middle, and I believe on that one the frequencies are in sequential number on the terminals on the back. So anyway, here's a Tonewheel generator. There's a couple of things I noticed in here. One thing is that on the front side of this, here's the magnet bars, and there's hardly any clearance at all. I have this Tonewheel generator locked down right now, but even raised up, it probably won't come up more than another, let's say, 1/4 of an inch or maybe a 1/2 inch tops. And there really isn't a whole lot of clearance between the ends of these magnet bars and the front of this console case. And if this thing is suspended by springs and you were to move it around, there's a good chance that the whole Tonewheel generator might bang up against the front of this And if that happens, it could knock these things out of adjustment. So that's just one more reason to lock down your Tonewheel generator before you move it. Now this one was not locked down when I got it, and if you look right here, my terminal strip, this terminal strip there is broken. So while I'm changing the capacitors in here, I am going to be pondering what to do about fixing that. I got a couple of suggestions off the organ forum. Super glue, two-part epoxy. Another option would be do nothing, but I'll think about that. I got some two-part epoxy, thinking that maybe I can fit by raising these wires up some back here, maybe I can clean this off real good, and maybe I can cut a piece of some piece of material that I can slide behind there as a kind of like a backing plate, and maybe epoxy that or hot glue that to the back side of that thing. There isn't much space on the other side of it because of all the soldering that has to go on. So anyway, these are the small capacitors. These are, let me look at my notes here, those are 0.105 microfarads. They don't make that value anymore. And I'm going to replace them with 0.100 microfarad, which they do make, and that's within 5%. So in my world, that's close enough. Plus these when I take these out, I'll measure a few and let you know. These could be double their stated value by now. So I'm sure the tuning on these is way off for the filter circuits. These big ones, there's only 6 of these, and these are 0.255 microfarad, which that's not made anymore either. I'm going to replace that with 2 capacitors, a 0.220 and a 0.033, and that adds up to 0.253, which is within 1% of 0.255. So that's how I'm going to do that, these big ones right here. I might have to get creative finding a spot for them. Might have to put one here, and I might have to stick another one down in here somewhere. One of them's pretty small physically, so. But anyway, I'm going to get started on the Tonewheel generator, and we'll see how that goes. One thing I might do also is I might go ahead and, thinking about this some, I might go ahead and put the motor and the scanner back in. It'd be super easy to do from here. And then I could take the starting leads and the run leads and just fashion up a real simple start switch for that. And as I replace these, I can bring the Tonewheel generator up to synchronous speed with the run motor and measure the output and see how I'm doing with the output, because all of the tones in this Tonewheel generator that use capacitors, their output right now is about 10 dB below the tones that don't use the capacitors. So anyway, we'll see how this goes. I'm cleaning up the Tonewheel generator here before I start changing the capacitors. That looks like a date code there. Somebody put their initials on there. I can't read it, but the date is 4-23-51, April 23rd, 1951. That agrees with the, based on the console serial number. And also I looked at the date code for the capacitors that are in there, the old capacitors. And they're dated, their manufacture date on them is the 3rd week of 1951, so early early 51 in January. So looks like the capacitors were made in January, and by April they found their way inside this Tonewheel generator. Making preparations to recap my Tonewheel generator, and I thought I would show you this starting circuit that I threw together here, which allows me to start the Tonewheel generator up without using the components that are part of the console, because they've all been removed. This is a three-way switch, a standard three-way light switch, and it's got two positions, a start and a run. It's in the starting position right now. The power comes into this switch, and when it's on start, then the power routes over to the starting motor, and when the switch is flipped to this position, run, it switches the power to the synchronous motor. You know, normally with the Hammond starting sequence, you got two switches and a 250 ohm resistor in there and all that. I've discovered that you can start this one up without needing the 250 ohm resistor. And I've been having some problems with some stuck tone wheels, so this allows me to run it at synchronous speed, so I can put an amplifier on each one of these terminals and listen for the tones. And if you've got a stuck tone wheel, or a tone wheel that's not running up to full speed, you can tell it by listening on these terminals. So it's pretty useful. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it at synchronous speed and measure the output of each terminal before and after I change the capacitors, which will give me an idea of what kind of a difference it made, besides just listening. So here we go with the starting sequence. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this in. It's on start, and when I hear the Tonewheel generator come up to speed, then I'll flip it to run. Okay, that's it. Now it's running. Alrighty, well, here's the plan I've come up with for trying to fix my broken terminal strip. It's broken in 2 or 3 pieces back there. And what I've got right now, I'm just testing the fit out here. These are spring-loaded clips that you use to hold potato chip bags together. I'm going to use them sort of as clamps, and I've discovered by putting 3 of them just like that, it sort of holds the pieces more or less together. So I'm going to try this in 2 different stages. The first stage is I'm going to mix up some 2-part epoxy, 5-minute set time, and I'm going to put the epoxy on the various surfaces of the terminal strip, and then I'm going to put them together like that and wait maybe for an hour for that to set up. And then after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these popsicle sticks, or 2 of them actually, and I'm going to put them under here, and I'm going to epoxy them to the back side of the terminal strip, and I'm hoping that by doing that, that will provide some additional backing to the repair, so that you know, it's not all the stress isn't concentrated in the thinness of the terminal strip itself. So I'm going to put, First I'm going to glue it like that and let it set up, and then I'm going to put these under here and glue them and let that set up. And hopefully that will work. Now, my main concern right now is that this Tonewheel generator, you know, is coated with Hammond oil. So I'm going to take some Q-tips. I've done this before and it works pretty well. I'm going to take some Q-tips with acetone, and I'm going to work the back side of that terminal strip and even down on the metal a little bit, and try and get as much of the oil off as I possibly can before I attempt this. I might even try and rough up the back side of that terminal strip a little bit with something. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, well, I got the first part of the epoxy job done. I've got the pieces epoxied to each other. It's only been setting up now for about 5 minutes, so I'm going to let that harden up for a couple hours before I glue the popsicle sticks on the back. The epoxy has a nozzle on it. Here's the one that I just used. This nozzle screws onto the two-part epoxy, and when you squeeze it out, it goes down in a swirly pattern through here, and it comes out the tip pre-mixed and everything. So this tip was nice because I was able to fit it in all the little spaces, and now I'm just going to wait for it to harden up, and we'll see what happens. I cleaned it all off with acetone, and I even scratched up the back side of that terminal strip with some sandpaper a little bit for when I try and put the popsicle sticks on the back. But it's starting to harden up now, and so I'm going to leave it alone for a while and I come back, and then I'll glue the popsicle sticks on, and we'll see what happens with that. Okay, there's stage 2 of the fix for my broken terminal strips. I just got done putting epoxy on the back side of the terminal strip and on these popsicle sticks. I decided to run them along the back there, and they overlap the metal of the Tonewheel generator chassis just a little bit. So I'm going to let that dry until tomorrow probably. But that looks to me like that's going to be sturdy enough so that I can solder the wires back on without causing any more problems. These wires here, I was a little concerned that if they flex too much, these output wires, and they may start coming loose, and then I got even more soldering to do. So anyway, that's the fix for that, and my curiosity is killing me, so I think I'm going to take this one capacitor off and replace it with the new one and see what that does to the output before I get too far into it. Well, here's the final result of my terminal strip fix-up. You can see it's still a little bit bent, but putting these wooden popsicle sticks in there and epoxying those to the back of the terminal strip, that helped a lot. So I'm fairly happy with that. That's probably not as good as new, but it's pretty good. Solid enough that when I solder the manual wires back on there, it isn't gonna mess up. I've got the Tonewheel generator running at the moment. That's because I couldn't stand the suspense anymore. I changed out a couple capacitors already. I changed this one out, and I changed this one out, And then down here on this end where there was a big capacitor, I replaced one that looks like this with these two. I'm going to, after doing that one's on there pretty solid, mounted solid, but I'm going to do a different mounting arrangement for the other 5 of those. But anyway, this output and the 2 that I did down here with the single capacitor, those outputs are a lot higher now than they were before, with measured with an AC voltmeter. I'll have to work out the decibel increase, but and I'll put together a chart when I'm completely done. But I'm pretty happy with the terminal fix, and now I'm starting to work on the capacitors. So I think it's gonna turn out just fine when I'm done. Here's another look at the Tonewheel generator. I'm about a little more than halfway done replacing the capacitors. There's the end with the run motor. Here's the end with the starting motor. I'm sitting at the front of the console, leaning over the rail of the console. This has turned out to be a pretty comfortable way to do it. One thing I wanted to mention, well, I'm showing you this also so you can see. Here's how the old capacitors lay in there, and here's how the new ones lay in there. Now these are 600 volt capacitors. I was going to get 400 volt, but I couldn't find them in enough quantity that I needed at the time, so I just ordered the 600s. And it turns out these are these are about the same size as these old ones. These old ones are 200 volt, but these fit in there just fine if you lay them in there, just like you see there. And I started out, originally I was unsoldering and removing the old ones and cleaning out the hole, and then sliding the new ones in to the hole, and then bending them and then soldering them. And I stopped doing that because for a couple reasons. One reason is that these little transformers are wound with a super fine wire. It's really hard to see an individual strand of it, and if you mess around down in here too much, there's a chance you could break one of those wires, and if you do, it's going to be difficult to get the insulation off the broken end and get it spliced back together. And I just figured the more I messed around with these terminals here, the more of a chance there was for me to break one of these real fine wires. So after a couple capacitors, I finally just got to the point where I'm just clipping off the old capacitors, laying the new ones in here, and just wrapping them around these lugs and crimping them and trimming off the excess and soldering them on. And then when I get done, this is the output terminal here for each one. I put a AC voltmeter on there, and I test out the output, bring the Tonewheel generator up to synchronous speed and test out the output. And I'm writing them down in a chart so I can compare the old with the new. Changing these capacitors is making a huge difference in the output. I've graphed some of it. I've done some preliminary graphing of the ones that I've changed, and it's a huge improvement. And it brings these up to more along the lines of where they should be. So I just think these wax capacitors, they've drifted way out of tolerance. I'm going to measure some of them, and I'll put together a chart for that too. But that's how the new ones can fit in there if you use this style. I didn't have to. The leads that came on the capacitors were long enough to just go right in there, and I clipped off probably, maybe almost a ½ inch on each one once I got them in there. So I'm just going to continue on with the capacitor replacement, and next video you see I'll probably have them all changed out. Alrighty, there you go. All new capacitors in my Tonewheel generator. I took a voltage survey and I put it in a spreadsheet, and I'm going to generate some graphs, before and after graphs. It's running at synchronous speed right now. You can see the run motor spinning. And let's see, I'm on tone number 83, and it's putting out 5.7 millivolts, and before it was 2.6. Wow, that's a huge increase in power. Can't wait to hear this thing when I get it back together again. It's kind of tedious, and there's a lot of capacitors in there, as you can see, but the ones I got fit in there just perfect. So there you have it. Next step for me is I'm gonna take one more voltage survey, and then this thing was missing the felt cover, so I'm gonna fashion myself another cover for it to try and keep crud out of it now that I've got new stuff in it and got it cleaned up some. Here's a couple of the capacitors that I cut out of the Tonewheel generator. Those are supposed to be 0.105 microfarads or 105 nanofarads. I've got that one hooked up to a meter here, and I've got it on hold right now, but that's 729 nanofarads. So instead of 105, it's 729. It's like 7 times what it's supposed to be. So that's the reason that I replaced these. These things are supposed to be close to their stated value because they're used in tuned circuits in the Tonewheel generator. Well, when you've got a capacitor that's 7 times what it's supposed to be, the tuning is way, way off from the Tonewheel frequency. There's a second value of capacitor that's used in the Tonewheel generator. That one should be 255 nanofarads, and that one's measuring 850. So there's another example of how far off these have drifted in 60 years. Well, there you have it. I fashioned a new felt cover for my Tonewheel generator. When I got the console, it didn't have one, so I just made one out of some felt that I had laying around that I've been using for other purposes. You can see it's running, purring like a kitten. So I'm all done with that, and I'm pretty happy with the results. I'm anxious to get the console back together so I can see what it actually sounds like all together. But I'm going to have to get my brother over here. You can see that it's missing some pieces, like the keyboards, for example, and a bunch of other parts. So I'm done with the recap of the Tonewheel generator, and from here on it's basically just putting it all back together again. It's taken a while to do it, but once you start ripping this thing apart, it's a little bit like Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit hole. Once you go down the rabbit hole, you just keep opening doors to see what you can do. And now we're going to put it all back together again.